Located near the small town of Patterson, Washington, you'll find Columbia Crest Winery. Started by St. Michelle in 1983, Columbia Crest balances its impressive size with old world tradition. We spoke with head winemaker Katie Nelson and assistant winemaker Reed Clay about the story behind the winery's growth.
I want to start with a little bit of the history and how Columbia Crest got started and why Patterson for a winery.
Yeah, you saw on the drive out here, it's in literally the middle of nowhere. Yeah.
But I love.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah, just back in the mid 70s when they decided they wanted to build a winery out here in Eastern Washington. They just went around scouring different sites. It all ultimately came down to where the best grapes were going to grow. And they came up with the ideal spot here in Patterson in the Horse Heaven Hills. Great soils, great exposure to the sun, a lot of heat, a lot of wind that comes in and keeps the canopies in check, and concentrated fruit. It was just kind of a perfect combination of ideal grape growing site. So they planted the vineyard first, and back in 1979, one of the first grapes up here in the Horse Heaven Hills, and then the winery followed shortly after. We broke ground in the early 80s, and first vintage came out in 83. So
How has it changed over the years from 1983 till now? There's a whole bunch of other wineries out there, and you guys are still standing strong.
we have this tradition that we've kind of started as a fairly small winery and grown into what we are today, but we had this one vision, winemaking vision, that we set forth back in '83 that we've just stuck to, and as we've grown, we've kept that vision in sight and grown with it. Kind of a nice, slow, organic growth to where we are today. We're consistent. People know when you pick up a Columbia Crest bottle of wine, they know what they're getting. They've had it before. They know it's consistent. They're gonna, not be surprised. They know it's gonna be a great bottle of wine, and that's what we've been known for. Yeah.
Yes. So with that growth, we've added more people to the teams, but it's still very similar to what it was back then. I mean, we talk about how many barrels of Chardonnay we have that we still do barrel fermented and hand stir the barrels. The red wine program, has grown organically, still barrel aged, and that dedication, the teams, still that focus.
What do you think is most important to you as a head winemaker?
Just being able to, I guess, marry that tradition with the innovation that we do here. We get to play with a lot of different varietals and different fermentation vessels, from concrete to big oak, upright tanks. But I really want to keep that tradition, alive, but, be able to play with it a little bit and just create these, wines with a great sense of place that really showcase the vintage, and, you get to see all the fun things that we're doing here.
And you've been here for 16 years now, is that correct?
16 years with a 3-year break, and then back in August. Yeah.
What keeps you coming back for more?
I always tell people it's the people, the people here, the teams, the caring of every detail, that from the the lab to bottling to the cellar. Everybody has that passion to make these great wines and make sure they're friendly and accessible to people around the world. I love that. And then just the history of this winery. Columbia Crest is very important to Washington State's history, and I'm really excited to be kind of leading it into the future. Right.
What about you, Reed? What led you to the red side versus white?
Job opening. No. I like all wines, but I just kind of got my foot in the door originally at Snoqualmie Winery, where it was all reds being made there. So it's what I did first, and it's kind of what I've always done and kept track of. I don't know. Red wine's fun. It's you have to be really patient and wait the 2 years for stuff to age, and I think I'm a pretty patient guy. It fits my personality well. Yeah.
Do you guys have anything new and exciting for the future?
Yeah, we're really excited about our new Reserve Red Winery. We can tell you a little bit more about that, but it's going to be beautiful.
So we started a reserve program here at Columbia Crest back in the 90s. Like I said, when people come out to the winery, they know us for our Grand Estates tier, our H3 tier, but a lot of people don't know about our reserve tier, which we mentioned is only 0.5% of what we make here at Crest. Just a very top pinnacle of winemaking here, I guess you say. But back in the 2005 Reserve Cab got the #1 wine in the world from Wine Spectator, coming from a big producer of Crest. It's pretty remarkable. Still Washington's first and only #1 rating. And so since then, we've really expanded on that reserve program, and we're breaking ground on a new reserve room in 2019, which we're super excited about. We're going to have concrete fermenters, different shapes, stainless fermenters, little tiny concrete squares, tulip-shaped concrete, wooden tanks. We're getting really geeky.
I was going to say, it sounds like you're really excited for this.
We're really excited. Yeah, we're bringing in, we always say tradition and innovation. We're bringing in a lot of new innovative things that we're really excited about. I know, we're really excited about our reserve program and expanding that. Yeah.
What does the typical day look like, say, during harvest here? Because you have a lot of people that you work with it being such a big winery.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on. It's like a little city out here in Patterson. Yeah, you come in and it's dark outside, you go downstairs. Sometimes the sun comes up, but we don't see it. We're down there. And this winery is all built underground. I don't know, there's Katie's out tasting fruit in the vineyards, calling in, hey, this fruit's tasting really good. You should put it on the schedule to bring it in next week. We're down there, we're receiving that fruit, we're crushing it to different tanks, deciding, Katie dove in a little bit, we have 10 different types of fermenters downstairs. We're pretty innovative on stuff we're using down there, so we're deciding what tank it's going to, what kind of yeast we're going to put in, temperatures, pump over regime, what kind of barrels we're going to go to. There's just
a lot of tasting.
A lot
3
of
times
tasting.
a day.
Yes. Yeah, constantly keeping up on the ferments, how they're tasting, if the extraction's good, taking them off skins. There's a lot going on. It's kind of a blur of 2 months that just don't know where they go.
How many people are you working with at one time?
We have about 60 cellar workers now, full time, and then during harvest, about doubles in size. We bring in some temporary workers to help out.
And how do you manage everybody?
I don't know how they are. Somebody's watching out for them.
They're cellar supervisors, cellar leads. They work very closely with the winemakers. Reed, he touches base with them constantly. He's out on the floor interacting with people.
Yeah, like I said, we have this long tradition and history down in the cellar. I don't know, you walk through the cellar, there's Roy Wood, who's taking care of the reserves. He's been here for 35 years almost. You look over, there's Don Clark sitting down there. He's been here for 27 years. These guys are helping corral all these guys and tell them what to do, I guess. We have a lot of experience and history down there, which is pretty unique and really cool.
When someone comes here for the first time, say they've never been here, what would someone's experience look like coming to Columbia Crest?
Well, to the tasting room, again, we talk about the longevity of the employees here. A lot of the people working in this tasting room have been here since the beginning. I mean, they can really take you through the history of the region and Washington wine industry in general, which is great. We try and taste mostly on exclusive wines that you can't find elsewhere. A lot of reserves that we make, which are, the top 0.5 to 1% of the fruit that we see in a year, are these reserve bottlings, which really showcase the vineyards and different varietals. So they have a lot of that for people to taste. And there's a self-guided tour, which is, I think, really unique, that you get to, kind of look out over the, white fermentation area, go down and see the Petit Chez, which is where a lot of the reserves are at. And so, even if you're here on a day where you can't schedule a tour, you can do something yourself.
Tell me more about this self-guided tour. That's unique to, I feel like you don't see that a whole lot.
Right. I mean,
there's a little station set up throughout the lobby here, and we have a viewing window down in the cellar. And then you can go down the staircase and take a look at our reserve barrel room. And then if you call ahead, we'll take you down and walk you through the cellar a little more hands-on.
The property in general, you pull up and it's massive. It's a big property.
Yeah, so you see this cute little chateau sticking up here above the ground, but What people don't know until they come out and take the tour and look around, I always call it the roots of the winery. Underground here, we have almost 20 acres of building all built underground here, with all of our tanks where fermentation happens. All of our barrels are stored. It's mostly just for temperature control, being down in the earth like that. Yeah, people get thrown back by the size sometimes. We always say we're doing stuff the exact same way we started with. We started hand stirring 20 Chardonnay barrels when we started, and we have 11,000 Chardonnay barrels.
Wow.
Still getting hand stirred by 2 guys every week. So just keeping that tradition, I think that's what makes us unique as Columbia Crest, with keeping those traditions and techniques in place.
McKinley Springs began as a family farm in the heart of the Horse Heaven Hills and has grown to one of the largest vineyards in Washington state. Doug and Sandy Rowell took us from their tasting room in Prosser to the vine block that started it all.
This is where it all started, at least as far as the wine and the vineyard that you planted.
Yeah, her grandfather started the place in 1945, and it was originally a dryland wheat farm. And then in the late 50s started drilling wells and started irrigating, and we still raise a lot of sweet corn, peas, wheat, beans and stuff like that. But then yeah, in 1980 is when we planted the first vineyard. When we first started, there was only one grower in existence on Horse Heaven at that time. It was Donna Linda Mercer, and they had started with Cabernet. And so we actually took cuttings off of their plants to start this vineyard. Why cab? Because we could get cab. Who would have known at the time that cab would grow so well up on the Horse Heaven Hills? So it was a little bit fortuitous, you know, that we chose Cabernet to start with, but it just was circumstance.
Yeah.
If we had grown Lemberger, you know, something that the state of Washington really doesn't do that well or is not that popular, who knows where we would have gone over the course of the next 5 years.
Yeah.
Just kind of got lucky planting Cabernet.
Now there's a story I heard about how the artesian well got discovered. How did that come about?
Originally, and most of Horse Heaven is still quite that way, that there's not a lot of water on Horse Heaven, and the original well was only producing maybe like a gallon a minute. And kind of a shirt-tail relative was an old fellow by the name of Byron Reeser, and he was a very famous well witch at the time, whether you believe in that or not. But I think he was probably getting bored, and he went and cut a stick off the willow tree and started wandering around, and then went and got her father, and he said, we need a bunch of stakes and some hammers. He says, there's a lot of water to be had on this place. And he could tell you the depths that the various levels of water were at and the amount of gallons per minute, and he even predicted that they would come up artesian, and he pretty much hit the nail on the head.
You have, like I said, the very first vineyards planted behind me. Did you ever imagine that it would grow to be 2,800 acres?
Not 35 years ago, not even 25 years ago, we didn't think we would be to the level we're at now, but it just kind of shows you the growth of the wine industry in the state of Washington.
Let's talk about some of the wines that you have here on the table, because one thing that sticks out to me the most is this bombing range wine. Why did you guys choose to name it that?
This whole area that you're standing in all the way down to the Columbia River, during World War II, everybody living and farming in this area had to leave, and they used the area to train fighter pilots. Thus we came up with the bombing range series, and we still find this stuff laying around every once in a while. This is from back during World War II. Okay.
And Sandy, what are some of the other wines that we have here on the table?
We have a rosé made from Cabernet, and then the Cabernet, a Viognier, and our Unbroken is a Cab Merlot, Cab Franc, and Malbec blend.
Yeah, the Unbroken, it's kind of a unique label on it, and it's kind of a tribute to the unbroken spirit of the Horse Heaven pioneers.
Okay.
Because back when they were homesteading this in the early 1900s, you could only get 160 acres, and there's only about 6 to 8 inches of rainfall a year up here. But there was no running water up here at the time. Even McKinley Springs flowed so intermittently, it wasn't reliable water. So when you came up here to work your homestead, you had to bring not just enough water for you, but for your horses, and coming 30 miles from town and up over those hills. It was a pretty hardy soul that tried to make a living up here.
Any more varietals that you see experimenting with that just catch your interest?
If a winery has a particular thought in mind, we don't plant anything just for the sake of planting. So we'll have a winery come to us and say, hey, will you plant me 5 acres of this or 10 acres of that? And then we'll give it a shot. I think Washington State is still in its infancy as compared to California in trying to decide which areas grow the best grapes with that particular varietal. Horse Heaven is becoming very famous for its Cabernet Sauvignon. And Cab is king. I don't think you'll ever really knock that one off. But there's some unique areas around this state that could probably do a really good job of growing some of the other varietals. We're still in the hunt and peck mode as far as what grows best where. The growth is great. It's as the industry goes, we go. If there wasn't an industry, and particularly some of the pioneers, the Hogue family, Chateau Saint Michel wine estates, taking the big leap. Because back in the 70s, when there was a little bit of a push into the wine industry, we had some really tough winters and it froze them all out, and there was this thinking that you can't successfully grow wine grapes. And with the help of Dr. Clore out of WSU, started picking those sites as where can we successfully grow grapes and survive the winters and stuff like that. But then you still had to have somebody with enough guts to put up the winery, put up the facility. Okay, we'll take the grapes if you grow them. It's kind of like a chicken and egg thing. What are you going to do? And we started planting before Columbia Crest even came. Actually, our first customer for these grapes was St. Chapelle out of Boise, Idaho. And then when Columbia Crest built their facility in Patterson, then we started planting more grapes and servicing their needs.
Double Canyon Winery opened its new facility in West Richland in the summer of 2017. General Manager and Vineyard Manager Will Bechtel explains the origins of the Double Canyon Vineyard and shows us around the new facility, which includes some of the newest state-of-the-art technologies.
From the minute you step foot inside Double Canyon Winery, you see this picture, kind of where it all started.
Yeah, so this is really our window into the vineyard. Without taking people an hour, 10 minutes down the road, we're kind of able to give them a shot of where we started and, of course, where I grew up. On this piece of property, we started planting in 2007. Generally completed in 2008, the last third of it, but have added a couple of different blocks along the way, including one we're real excited about just coming online this year.
So what are they doing here, this process?
So we're unloading it, taking it up and through our distemmer to remove any stems and leaves. And from there, we're pumping it inside to one of our tanks. Now, one of the pieces of technology that we've gone and employed is this is the only distemmer like this in the US. The left side is very traditional. The right side is elongated and there's a trap door in it. So as we're able to pick fruit cleaner and cleaner, we can open that trap door and kind of bypass the rest of the process.
Okay.
Other than that, the crush pad's very traditional Washington, standard grape processing.
Is there anything to note in this room that kind of makes it different from other, winemaking facilities that just like, oh, this is what's gonna make us stand out?
Really, it's that pump on the bottom of the tank.
Okay.
So out of our 30 tanks, 26 of them are fermenters and 22 of them have automated pump over devices. So as opposed to taking a pump from tank to tank, we actually have the pump mounted on the tank, and then through our software can control when we pump the juice over the cap. So instead of twice a day, we've actually, I think, have gone as high as 22 times a day, putting juice over the cap, trying to maximize the extraction of color and flavors.
Kate Michaud started her career as a cellar worker, pulling hoses, cleaning tanks, and moving barrels. Now, with over a decade of winemaking experience under her belt, she still likes to get her hands dirty.
So we're in the lab now. What do you typically do when you first step foot in the lab?
So the first thing I like to accomplish is seeing where all of our ferments are. My fermentation log is full of all of our ferments. So each of these on a daily basis get Brix and temp, and there would be a sample of that tank for me to taste.
From start to finish, say a barrel of Merlot, how often do you have to check the
Daily.
Brix? Daily.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah. So in the morning I'll just taste, but I'll also be looking at the data so that I can see, oh, this needs to happen next, or this is ready to press, or these bricks aren't falling fast enough, or this temperature is out of range. I mean, there's a billion things it could be, but I'm looking for some action that I need to take. So this is a map of the winery, and what you're looking at is TankNet, which is showing you a map of our tanks and what temperatures they are. And so, for example, the blue would be chilling, the red would be heating, the kind of animated red means it's actively heating.
Earlier on in the day, you were inside this tank. You said you like to get your hands dirty, and this was something you were doing, cleaning out this tank. What's the process you go through?
Well, so let me back up for a second and tell you that yesterday we ran some chemistry on this and through tasting, and we decided that it was time to press this tank. There was no more color to be had, and the tannin was kind of where we wanted it. So we drained it last night, and so when we came in this morning, we were ready to dig out the grapes, because there's now no more liquid with it, and put it in the press to get a little bit more. So I like to dig out tanks, especially when they're on the smaller side, and this is one of them. So the press works, it's like a big bag that inflates at different pressures, and depending on the pressure, you might taste good or it might taste bitter. And so you need somebody standing there to taste at the different pressures to see where to send it. You either send it to a tank that's kept separately and labeled hard press, or it's good enough to send back with the fraction that you drained off. So I was tasting to see if I liked it or not, and thought it should go back to the main tank. You see my little glass? I sit down here and catch stuff from right here and taste, and then make the decision. One of the last parts of the process is barreling down the wine after it's been pressed and it's dry. I kind of stand here, gaze up at my barrels, and pick the specific barrel that I want, which is kind of just the last kind of mark you can make on a wine is by giving it a specific flavor through oak.
So we made our way into the barrel room, and this is kind of where the wine will sit for a couple years.
You know, generally 14 months to 20 months on our higher end product. So we'll bring the stuff from tank, drain it off to these barrels, and yeah, we'll put it here for safekeeping. We're really happy to be able to keep our new vintage wines separate from our wines that we harvested from the crush of 2016, just so we can treat them differently and allow these to go through their malolactic fermentation and then rest comfortably.
Why did you guys decide to come to West Richland for this state-of-the-art facility?
You know, we really liked, one, you've got the Red Mountain growing region right here where we do get a small amount of fruit from. You've got the amenities of Tri-Cities, and then our proximity to the new Washington State University viticulture campus is really paramount. We think that going on into the future that we'll be able to attract talent right here.
So let's talk more about the building itself and the reason for its structure and why it was built this way.
We built it, it's a concrete tilt-up building, which offers a great insulation value. It's also a very sustainable form of construction. Cement's locally sourced, all the panels poured on site, flat on the ground, and then tilted up within the infrastructure built inside of it. We use LED lighting throughout it, and then additionally we've got kind of a state-of-the-art barrel washer that allows the use of steam to cut down on water use and recycling some of the water for primary rinses of barrels.
So very eco-friendly.
Very eco-friendly.